Radcliffe, if you're just joining us. Mrs Justice Yip at Manchester Crown Court passed judgment. Scarlett Jenkinson, life with a minimum term of 22 years, less 352 days spent in remand. Eddie Ratcliffe, 20 years minimum, less those 352 days. She did say there is hope they can both be rehabilitated in time, called this a murder of significant conduct. Lots of harrowing detail to go through in that. I'm joined also in the studio now by the former Metropolitan Police Detective, Peter Bleksley. Peter, we sat and listened to a huge amount of very grisly and disturbing detail, clearly premeditated, particularly of Scarlett. You have lied so many times, it's impossible to even know what's true, and expressed concern that Scarlett wanted to kill again and has shown no remorse. Likewise, with Eddie, shown no remorse at trial or indeed today. Sent down. Peter Bleksley, what's your take on their sentence?
Brianna's family have had to suffer the horror of sitting through the trial and then to listen to the words of Mrs Justice Yip, which are so astonishing, are so brutal, are so vile, including Scarlett expressing a desire to perhaps kill again and to collect body parts, including possibly an eye, which was her intention and would have been carried out probably had they not been disturbed on that dreadful, fateful, murderous day. My thoughts go out to everyone who knew and loved Brianna, and I think Mrs Justice Yip, in her calm and measured way, has handed down sentences that are appropriate, 22 years and 20 years respectively, but they will, of course, only ever be released if there is a huge amount of rehabilitation work done in the next 2 decades.
And Peter, the details once again started off at the beginning, Mrs Justice Yip, by saying no one will ever know what Brianna was capable of. The parents' loss is imaginable. Went on to detail 28 deep stab wounds to the head, the neck and the back. Defensive injuries showed that Brianna tried to defend herself. A sustained and very violent assault, a joint plan you carried out together, and particularly damning of Scarlett. You blur the lines between fantasy and real life.
And of course, both defendants lied and lied and lied again, almost to the point where it is indecipherable whether either of them were telling the truth or not. Now, Mrs Justice Yip has had to abide by sentencing guidelines and sentence them according to their age when they committed the crime. They were both 15. And there are guidelines for 15 to 16-year-olds specifically for this type of offence. And these sentences sit at the very top of what could be handed down by the judge. In other words, 20 years for the most serious of crimes because there were so many aggravating factors, and Scarlett has another 2 years, taking her to 22, because the aggravating factors were numerous and appalling.
And Peter, Mrs Justice Yip was very, very detailed and methodical about any potential mitigating circumstances. Scarlett said that she was not mature for her age, evidence of self-harming, of anorexia, an earlier diagnosis of autism and ADHD when she was younger, but said that wasn't sufficient to mitigate her sentence. Do you feel that that's fair? Justice has been done today?
Oh, undoubtedly. I think the judges handed down as stern a sentence as she possibly could within the guidelines and in order to prevent some future appeal. Although, of course, these two children, they remain children, and their legal teams will undoubtedly, I suspect, try and look at the sentencing to see if there is any possible way they can appeal. That, of course, would bring on more hurt, more upset for Brianna's family, and it is her family who will now serve the whole life term, because that sense of loss will simply never go away.